Having been born in Britain, I'm a British citizen. With an Israeli mother, I also have an Israeli passport, and now I live in America as a permanent resident. I have a connection to 3 different countries, and yet I can't vote in elections in any of them. I lost that right in Britain. I've never had that right in Israel or America. And over the last 5 years, watching various elections, it can be really frustrating to have to watch an election from the sideline and not be able to vote. And in Israel, it feels like there's an election every other month that I would love to be participating in and voicing my opinion. We all know the importance of voting. We all know that voting is both a right and a privilege that we possess and didn't always have. In Britain, it was only in the mid-19th century that Jews finally got the vote. And here in the USA, we know that full emancipation and equal voting for women only came up last century. Voting is a right, but it really is a privilege. And it's a privilege that allows us to express our opinions, our thoughts, our ideals, our desires about the countries that we care for and the places that we live. In most cases, we're required to have citizenship in order to vote. I understand that living here, until I become a citizen, I can't vote in the elections. But in Israel, as a country that claims to be the state for all the Jews, we do actually have a potential to vote. Not in their national elections, but in the World Zionist Congress elections. Every 5 years, the World Zionist Congress convenes in Jerusalem, dating all the way back to 1897 and Theodor Herzl. Those grainy pictures we've seen of Herzl with the big beard standing up in Basel, that Congress still meets today, every 5 years. Now in Jerusalem, in the state of Israel, the homeland that Herzl was really dreaming about, we have a Zionist Congress. And it's the one place where we, as American Jews, can voice our opinions, have a vote about what's going to happen in Israel. And I would suggest, recognizing various decisions that take place in Israel, and especially the place of Reform Judaism in Israel, it is a right and a privilege, but for us it's also an obligation that we should ensure that our voices are heard. At the World Zionist Congress, there are 500 delegates. 173 of them, 33%, go to Israel, and they match and mirror whatever the results of the latest Israeli elections are. Probably, hopefully, that'll mean the March elections as the final ones will see the delegation split amongst the Israeli political parties. But then we in the American Jewish community get 29% of the seats. That's 152 delegates that we have the chance to vote on a direct proportional representation system. As you can imagine, the Reform movement doesn't get many delegates in the Israeli electoral system. And the Reform movement actually doesn't get that many delegates from elsewhere in the world, except for some from Canada, some from Britain, and then really a spattering from the other countries who have representation at the Zionist Congress. They rely on us as the American Jewish community to take part in these elections and to vote. We have, as a Reform movement, a political party known as Artza. Artza represent the rights of Reform Judaism in Israel. They've done tremendous work to support Reform synagogues and Reform communities growing in the state of Israel. Communities that receive virtually no funding from the Israeli government, whereas Orthodox communities do. The one place they can get funding and support is from foreign donations or from the World Zionist Congress and the money that is given out as a result of those elections. Just for a moment, how many of us in this room have spent time in a Reform synagogue in Israel, even just being there once for a Shabbat? That synagogue that you went to was supported by money that came as a result of these elections. 5 years ago, Artza received 39% of the vote, which equaled 56 delegates, and that ensured a representation around the table that guaranteed $4 million a year, each of the last 5 years, for the Reform movement in Israel. That's real money that makes a real difference for Reform Jews in Israel and ensures Reform rights. But more than that, I think that when we vote, and when we vote for Archer and vote for Reform Judaism, Israel's paying attention and noticing that we care. There are very few ways that we can make sure that Prime Minister Netanyahu, the government of Israel, and everyone in Israel knows that we care and are concerned about what goes on there. This is one of those ways. Because our delegates and our representatives get to sit around the table with their representatives. They're in the room. They debate, they discuss, and they negotiate. And progress has been made on other issues as a result of our representation. The egalitarian prayer space at the Kotel, at the Western Wall, certainly was helped by our representation at the Congress. Moves that are taking place for civil religion and for reform rights certainly are helped by what is taking place at the Congress. We have a chance to make a difference. We have a chance to vote. It's not a one-day election. It's a slightly strange electoral process. I was thinking about it. It's a little harder to vote in the Zionist Congress elections than like American Idol or America's Got Talent. But given what's happened in the last week, it might be simpler than an Iowa caucus, for example. So, all you have to do is log on to the website, zionistelections.org. We have cards at the back of the room that Jared and Justin have kindly agreed to give out to everyone as you're leaving. You can log on to that website, but if you don't even remember the website, all you have to do is open your camera app on your phone, and there's a QR code that will take you directly there. Then there's a couple of things you have to fill in. There is a small cost associated with it that covers the cost of having the elections. And then I hope that you will vote Arza, which is the reform slate. It's slate number 2. I am standing as one of their delegates in a very unrealistic position, so I will not be going to the Congress. But I still believe it's important to put my name to it and support them in that way. And I hope you'll vote. And when you're there, if you're not convinced to vote for Arza, then look at some of the other slates as well. The important thing is that we as an American Jewish community have an opportunity to have a voice about what happens in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu often stands up and says, I am the Prime Minister of Israel, but I'm also the Prime Minister speaking for the Jewish community. When he does that, he means us. He means each one of us in this room. And he does that without us voting in the Israeli government elections, without us voting for the Knesset. This is the one place where we can have a vote and a voice. And knowing the importance of supporting Reform Judaism in Israel and the lack of support that they have otherwise, I really hope that you will vote Reform. If you do want to speak about it after the service, please don't hesitate to come and talk to myself, Rabbi Jordi, Cantolis. We can all talk about the Reform movement in Israel and the importance of these elections. And if you have any questions over the week, be in touch. And make sure you do take one of the cards from Jared or Justin at the end so you can at least find out a little bit more about what's happening. Shabbat Shalom.